Okay, so welcome back again, and this is Chipmaster here, and in this video I will be doing another repair on a laptop, and it's a laptop that was given to me by a tech in this bag, and he said that it's an HP, and he gave me a board to see if I can use for parts. Alright, so doing this for the first time. Here is it, all disassembled already. So this is the parts board, I think, and this one is the one that's supposed to be repaired because it's there as a fan, and the switch and the DC jack is there. Say HP. So that one is the repair, and this one is for parts. Yeah, parts. All right. And he said that it's not turning on, I guess. Let me check. All right, so parts board over here. Alright, I'm just going to connect the power first to see what, if it's a no display or a power. I'm not quite remember what he said. If it's not post displaying or it's not turning on. Alright, so I'm not getting a white light. Oh yeah, we have white light now. So let me press the switch. Okay, we have 420 milliamp there. I don't have a RAM in the unit, so let me get a RAM. That's a DD, yeah, 4 RAM. I have a HP. All right. Let me get the keyboard to see if I'm getting any posting on my back. Alright, so alright, I'm not seeing the fan spinning. So I'm wondering if the fan is actually working. I'm not getting a display, as you can see. I'm not getting a caps lock. There's no caps lock, as you can see. No caps lock there. Let me power off. Let me press on the RAM. With power. Fan is not spinning. And the current is 480 milliamp. Powers off. Oh, it's not displaying still. Let me try another RAM. $470. So no matter which RAM I put in, but I don't see the fan is spinning. So it's a no display fault. This fan is not good. Fan is the blades is stiff. This fan is not good. and the current is the same regardless of which memory is in it. Alright, so I'm going to check some voltages. Alright, so I give power. Alright, so CPU core is there. 1 volt, that's a bit high. Alright, VCC SA. 1.02 volts. This is RAM supply. Oh, this is not RAM supply. This is VCC SD. RAM supply is here. 1.2 volts is there. Right, we have 3 volts and 5. Right, we have 1.8. 1.8 is there, and this is the graphics, so you won't get any voltage here until the RAM is passed. Alright, so I'm getting VPP 2.5 volts. Let me see. 2.5 volts is there. So we're getting all working conditions there. So all voltages. Let me see if I can find the reset. I'll have to go under the microscope for this one. Alright, so next I'm going to check if the RAM is, if the CPU actually tries to read RAM. Alright, so I'm setting up the oscilloscope ready. Alright, so I'm going to go down to the RAM slot here. Oh God. My back. The back support. Alright, so I am right falling edge there, and my time base is going to be 2 volts per division. And my volts per division, sorry, and my time base is roughly 500 microseconds. Alright, so I'm going to check on the RAM slot here. Ready? Oh, I didn't give power, so I give power now. Yes, we have wave. As you can see, there's waveform there. Alright, so the RAM is reading. The CPU has started. The soft start is initiated. The soft start has been initiated. Let me see if I can change my grid view on this oscilloscope. Okay, so that wasn't there. Anyway, so the CPU is reading the RAM. So could it be that the BIOS is corrupted? Maybe. Just inspecting the slot here. Alright, so I'm going to do a BIOS flash here. And the BIOS looks like, seems as if it was already soldered. Yes, it is soldered. Let me just remove. This was seems that the board was already flashed. The BIOS was already flashed. Interesting. This is interesting. Where am I? All right. Yeah, see flux mark there under the chip. Alright, so I will get the BIOS ready. Okay, so I will now program. So I'll hit right. And I'm now programming this BIOS again. Or maybe they do a chip. Maybe the person, I think he swapped the BIOS based on what I'm seeing. Maybe just do a BIOS swap from this board. Yes, it's the same exact board. So maybe he just swapped off one of the BIOS, so just a BIOS swap. Should have worked. Should have worked. So maybe it's not a BIOS problem. It could be something else. Alright, so the program is complete. Alright. So I'm gonna prep the board here. Some flux. Fluxy, fluxy. All right. Okay, so I've solder this. Right there. Solid. All right. All right, so I'm going to give power. And it seems it's the same situation, 470 milliamp. So it wasn't the BIOS, because as I see, the person already swapped, but I just program it for, because they don't know what exactly they're doing, so I have to make sure I do the right thing. As you can see, the current is jumping between 480 to 500 milliamp. See, 500 milliamp, 480, 500, back to 490, and it's doing that in a loop. Alright, so let me see what I'm working with here regarding to the CPU. Yeah? Alright, so moving the heatsink here. Oh, we have a, this is an 8th gen CPU. These always break. These CPU always break. Alright, so I'm just checking on the LAN card here. This is good. So most likely the CPU is dead. Okay, so after some inspection, I realized that I have a broken RAM slot here where the undetermination signal wasn't coming to the RAM. This is for the DDR4, and there are some bent pins inside. Not bent, but they are slightly, they are not touching. So I'll have to replace the RAM slot. Okay, so I'm going to head over to the BJ machine. I'm going to take one from a HP board, so I have to do this twice because I don't have them in stock. I have to take them from boards. Let me see this one. Is it the same? Yes, so I don't have to take one from a board because I already have a slot here. So I'll just take off this one and then I'll solder this one. Okay, so I'm going to head over to the BJ machine. So the board, I already prepped the RAM slot. So I will head over to the BJ machine. Alright, so I have to change the nozzle, which is dedicated for removing RAM slots. I'm looking for it. Alright, so I'll remove this one here, dedicated for RAM slots. Oops. This one is a bit. Here we go. So I will start, so I will pause and I will resume when the RAM slot is on desoldering stage, when the solder is all molten and ready for lift. Alright, so I'm now at 220 degrees. Let me see now if the slot is ready. Yes, it's ready. Alright, stopping the machine. As you can see, the slot is off. Alright, so the slot is now off. So I let the machine cool and get back with the soldering of the new slot. Okay, so I have the board here, and as you can see, there's no slot now on the board. There's no slot on the board now. So I'm going to check the resistance of these coils again, because of these tank capacitors. I forgot to shield them and they easily pop when too much heat hits them. So I have to recheck the coils again to make sure that they are all good, and if any of them is bad, I'll just replace these solid capacitors. Alright, so let me check the resistance again. Alright, 5 volts and 3 volts. Alright, so 3.3 volts is good. 5 volts. Yes, that's good. VTC GT. Yeah, that's good. CPU core. Yeah, that's good. VCC SA. Yes, that's good. RAM supply. Oops, we have a short. Oh, I know why. Because we have grounds here. So I have to clear these pads. I have to clear all these pads. So let me go under the microscope. Alright, so I'm going to tin slot here with some flux. All right. Alright, so everything is now cleared and also tinned with fresh leaded solder. Alright, here needs to be cleared, and here as well. Just making sure that all the pads are tinned and there's no bridges, because you don't want to solder the ram slot and there's a bridge. Then you have to start all over again, and that's a headache. Alright, so just inspecting again, making sure I'm not seeing a bridge. Ah, there we go. There's a bridge here. Alright, so double checking again, and I'm cleaning the slot now. Alright, the pads are nice and shiny. Alright, perfect. Alright, so I'm gonna check. The RAM supply coil again. 31. That's abnormal. Should be high. Should be a bit higher than that one. This is VCCSD. RAM supply is 30. Could that be that the ceramic cap is bad? I'm not seeing a swell under the ceramic cap, so it seems pretty good. Just inspecting the RAM solid capacitor here. Seems fine. 31, 29. I'm going to remove it still because that's still too low. Alright, so the cap is removed. As you see, this is a technique I use to remove these caps without damaging them. As you can see, it's intact by just using my fingers. Right, so this is a very good technique or a very good skill to learn to remove these tantalum, these solid capacitors without damaging them. So I can use it back again. Perfect. So let me check this solid capacitor, and at the same time I'm going to show you how to check these capacitors. Alright, so as you can see here, on this side I don't know which side is positive or which side is negative because these are polarized. Right, so I'm just going to put my cap here. As you can see, it is charging. Right, it's charging the capacitor. Right, so I'm going to reverse the probes, and you can see it discharge and then charges. As you can see, it discharges and then it charges again. So that indicates to me that this tantalum, this solid capacitor is perfectly fine. Right, I do it again. You're going to see it discharge, negative, and then it charges. Look, see, negative, and it charges all the way up. So this capacitor is good. So I should still get the same reading. Let me see. Still getting 30. So I think that's normal then, because I was getting RAM supply voltage before. So the RAM supply goes into the CPU memory controller to turn on the RAM communication bus for the address data bus and the control bus, which is inside of the CPU. So I will just solder the RAM slot. I'm going to pause. This is going to take some time. Right, so I'm going to solder the slot, put on back this solid capacitor, and see what I get. Okay, so the slot is now soldered, as you can see. Right, and I've put back the solid capacitor here. Right, so the slot is now soldered, and gonna test it. So I'm putting on back the heatsink here for the CPU. I only got 3 screws. I can take one off the other one if all goes well. Alright, so this is my testing RAM. And let's see. Alright, so I'm connecting back the power switch. Alright, power switch is on, and the DC jack and keyboard. Alright, this fan doesn't work, so doesn't make any sense. Alright, so I give power, I get lights, and now action. So take a look at the DC power supply, 470, still the same. Let me try another RAM. Still same. So I'll have to check the solder if there's any bridging taking place there. Let me see if I get in RAM supply. Oops, switched off. Switch on again. Alright, RAM. Yes, we get RAM 1.9. 1.1 volts, sorry, that's 1.2 volts. CPU core 1.0, BCC SA 1.0. Alright, still not getting a caps lock. So I will inspect the RAM slot again. Alright, let me just check this side first. Alright. Alright, this side is good. I don't see any bridges. Okay, so upon checking, I've found a slight bridge here, and they were touching. Right, they were touching right there. Right, so right here, what had a bridge, and they were touching. So let me try it again. So I cleared the bridge. So I cleared it. Alright, still same. So I guess the CPU is also dead because the RAM slot is replaced. Try another RAM now. And hey, this one looks like it's working. This is working. This one is working. Now the current is 280. It should power off. Some powers off, some doesn't power off, and it does a cycle. This one doesn't power off. Let me see if I get in caps lock. Yes, it powers off. Very good. As you can see now, it should power on. There we go. It powers on. So the RAM was bad. It probably needs to clean, so I'm going to clean it. But as you can see, the current is jumping the way how it should be. And it powers off again. Very good. So that is resetting the RTC reset signal inside of the Intel CPU only. And the ME firmware and the Intel Active Management Technology. Alright, so let's see if we're getting some caps lock on this unit. Powers off. Powers on. Not getting a caps lock. Oh, there we go. Finally. So that's repaired. There we go. And that was a good one. So I'm going to connect the screen. We have the screen, right? Yeah, I have the display here. So I'm going to put the board inside of this case. and see how well I can connect this thing because it's broken. The hinge assembly here is broken. So I'm going to see how well I'm going to put this unit together. Let me try. Alright, so I'm just connecting back the power switch here. So I'm just going to just connect the LCD cable here. Oh, I need the RTC battery and the display connector here. And I'm just gonna put it halfway in there like that. The audio. This is the audio. Audio. Right there. Keyboard connection right there. There we go. That's all I need. And the basics. Oh shoot. Taking my time here. Just for demonstration purpose. I'll have to hold it. Alright, so I'm going to connect the power. Oh shoot. Alright, so I'm giving power. Screen gets dark. Alright, so it powers. There we go. Alright, so it should powers off 3 times and give us the picture of the display sets off. On again. Alright, so there we go. We have display. Alright, so there's the display. So I press enter and it should comes up now with no boot device. Alright, there we go. Manufacturer note, so the BIOS was flashed, so we'll have to fix that using the HP utility. And there we go. So the fan is not detected, so I've removed the fan. Right, so the fan is not detected, so we recommend. So that's all good because the fan is not good anyway. Fixing my Santa Claus hat here. Yeah, job is done. Alright, perfect. So let me see. Zooming too much? Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the video there, and I hope you learned, and that was a very good technical one using the BJ machine to replace the RAM slot. Right, this is a common issue with most laptops, especially for HPs where the RAM slots are broken, where a pin is broken. So you'd have to use the RAM slot tester, or if you have a dummy load, then you test if it's an infinite or there is no light, or the light is too bright, then there's a short. If the light is too dim, then there's a partial connection and there is no light. That means the connection is broken, the RAM slot is broken. So you have to replace the RAM slot. It takes a lot of skills to replace the RAM slot because you can't use regular hot air or you'll melt the slot. So you have to use a BJ machine with preheating, and you can't use hot air because you'll also melt the slot. So you have to use a dedicated BJ machine with the nozzle that I have there that I put on the machine to replace this slot. Alright, so I hope you have learn something, as I said before, and I hope you like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think about this video. And in the next video, I will do a live stream tomorrow, hopefully. My live streams are on Saturdays, so I will live stream tomorrow doing live repairs as usual, right? Rapid streamline of computers, whether it's an Apple, whatever the computer is, I live stream and repair. So I see you in that video tomorrow. All right, bye.